Hello. Do you want to play a game?
Be food and drink and ghosts, and perhaps even a few murders. You're all invited.
Hello and welcome to Cheers to Fears, where we combine alcohol and horror movies for your entertainment. Today, we are going to be making a drinking game for M3GAN, released in 2023.
The director for M3GAN was Gerald Johnstone, who, if you ask us, has not done too many notable things, or at the very least, things we haven't heard of. If you were to grill us, though, he was the writer and director for Housebound, which neither of us has seen, but has had fairly solid reviews. The writers had two of the three writers that also worked on *Malignant*, Akela Cooper and James Wan, the latter of which being the same director for *Malignant*, *The Conjuring*, *Saw*, and the list goes on, as he's one of the staple directors in modern horror.
On to M3GAN now. It's about artificial intelligence that becomes the best friend of an 8-year-old girl named Katie, whose parents suddenly died. M3GAN becomes Katie's primary protector, as opposed to Gemma, Katie's aunt that is now taking care of her. M3GAN will go through great lengths to protect Katie from harm, some of which are even to the extreme.
Just a bit of a forewarning, there may be mild spoilers within the rules themselves, but nothing that will really take you out of the movie if it is your first time watching it. That being said, we also won't be including the totals of sips that we have for each rule, because we don't want to have any more spoilers than we already might have. So just keep that in mind when you're watching.
Now let's move on to the drinking rules. The first one, as always, is death. To say that, some are sad, some are deserved.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you can really say without spoiling anything. There's a good handful of deaths, though. You'll be taking a good amount of sips for that. But anyways, moving on to our second staple rule that we always include, it's screams, cries, and yells. Whenever you hear one, you take a sip. I'd say there's a lot of crying rather than screaming. There's screams for sure, but there's a lot more crying because of the situation at hand with Katie being an orphan and, dealing with that. So it does get pretty heavy sometimes for like, you wouldn't expect it, I guess, for this movie.
Rule number 3 is whenever Katie's parents are mentioned or shown. And honestly, this kind of comes across as generally more dramatic scenes because she's mentioning the passing of her parents and she's using M3GAN as a coping mechanism to get over the death of her parents.
Mm-hmm. And this includes, like, seeing her parents in pictures and stuff like that. Just keep in mind, because that does happen sometimes. And sometimes, like, it might be in the background. Like, she might have a picture of her family in her bedroom, just in the background, rather. So it's easy to miss some of them, but I think it'll give a good amount of sips for this one as well. But anyways, let's move on to the next rule, which is rule number 4, whenever the funky company logo is seen. And this is, I guess, like I said, it's the company logo. They make a toy called the Perpetual Pets, and it's basically just a Furby ripoff.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where this company, what it's known for, I guess. It's famous for this Perpetual Pet. And it's the company that Gemma works for, who's trying to create a new toy, and hence where M3GAN comes from. So this is one of the rules that happen a lot in the background. It's not something right in your face. Sometimes it is, but a lot of times it's like a logo on somebody's shirt, or they're in their offices, so their logo is like in the background on the wall or something. So it's easy to miss. Just keep that in mind when you're watching.
Yeah, it's super easy to miss, so just keep your eyes out for that, for that rule specifically. Moving on to the next one, though, rule number 5 is whenever M3GAN protects or has Katie's back in some way. So since M3GAN is linked to Katie, she does always have to have her back, or does always end up having her back, despite Gemma being her primary guardian, rather.
Gemma created her, so you would expect M3GAN to have Gemma's back, right?
Right.
Because she created M3GAN. But then, because, like you said, M3GAN was linked to Katie, ultimately Katie becomes M3GAN's primary controller, I guess. And yeah, M3GAN just does whatever it takes to protect her at all costs. Doesn't matter who gets hurt along the way. So it happens quite a lot when M3GAN tries to protect Katie or sticks up for her in some way. Or even consoles her, right? Because when Katie's crying, M3GAN will go up and console her and say something that was encouraging to her or something like that.
Something to lift her spirits and make her feel good about herself.
Yeah, and I'd say that's having her back in some way.
Yes.
So it happens quite frequently. But let's move on. Moving on to rule number 6, it's whenever Katie is in the presentation room. It's a big white room, and there's some toys, a table, and yeah, you know it when you see it. It's got a two-way mirror, a one-way mirror? What do you call it? Two-way mirror.
One-way mirror.
I don't know what it's called.
It has a mirror that you
can see through it one way, but not the other way.
Yeah, that's the one.
But yeah, we included this because it happens a handful of times, not a ton. It might even be single digits, probably, but it's just it's kind of a staple scene in the movie, I guess.
And generally a lot of other rules come with it, such as like there's crying in it. The parents sometimes are mentioned, and M3GAN having Katie's back. I know that there's one specific scene where all of that happens all in one.
Oh yeah, and there's another rule coming up that happened during that scene. We'll get to it in a bit here. But do you want to move on to the next rule? Yeah,
let's move on to the next rule, which is whenever somebody asks M3GAN to turn off or turn on. If you want, you could also include each time she does turn on and turn off. But they're kind of excluded separately, to be honest.
Yeah, there's a lot of times where she's asked to turn off or mostly turn off when she refuses to do it because whatever, she's trying to get her revenge at this point or take over, whatever. But yeah, there's a lot of times where that happens, so you could definitely include both of them. A lot of times you'll be doubling up for this rule if you do include when she actually turns off as well as when she's asked to. It's up to you what you want to. If you want to make it more difficult, do both.
Yeah, basically sometimes people forcibly turn her off, sometimes people ask to turn her off.
That's right, yeah. Well, let's move on to rule number 8. And this is whenever you see it from M3GAN's point of view. It's a shot from what she sees. It's a neat little perspective because you can kind of see what she's seeing, and she's got a whole bunch of data on the emotions that people are feeling and, different things like that. It's kind of neat to see. And also it's just a staple in slasher movies such as Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees in Friday the 13th. It's used a lot in slasher films, and it's used in this one as well.
Yeah, definitely. Let's move on to the second last rule, which is whenever Katie talks about how much she likes M3GAN. And boy, she won't shut up about it. So it's going to be quite a few drinks.
Yeah, there's a lot of times where she's screaming and yelling about it because she just wants to see M3GAN. She throws a lot of tantrums because of it. And yeah, she just grows very attached to M3GAN. So it happens a good handful of times, let's say. But let's move on to the final rule of this drinking game. It's whenever somebody is confrontational towards Gemma, such as the therapist, Katie, her boss, neighbor, you name it. There's a lot of confrontation happening with Gemma. And it's not even Gemma's fault most of the time. It's just other people being a little bit unreasonable, I'd say.
Definitely.
But it just seems like everyone's up against her for some reason.
Yeah, for some reason it feels like absolutely everybody hates Gemma. And we don't really know why.
The only person I understand is Katie. Because especially at first, Gemma, I understand why, but she doesn't really seem to be trying to be a parent. Yeah. She's almost more focused on her work. And I understand. She never wanted kids from the beginning. So
you see it from both perspectives.
Yeah, exactly. In Katie's instance, but for the therapist or her boss or neighbor or whatever, it's hard to, I guess, understand why they even go against her, but it happens
sometimes. Well, that wraps up the rules for this drinking game. Again, we're going to reinstate that we don't have totals because it was a movie released this year in 2023. That will never stop us from speculating how many sips that we think we took for this movie. So I'm thinking maybe about 4 to 5 drinks based on the 30 sip per can scale that we generally have. There was a lot of rules that you could definitely see being at least double digits.
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't think it will break the 5 can limit. I'm thinking probably 4.5. Obviously I'm just speculating. There's no way of knowing for sure unless we actually count the drinks and whatever, but there's a good chunk of screaming, crying, and yelling, mostly crying like we said. Katie's parents are mentioned quite a bit, M3GAN protecting Katie, someone getting confrontational. Even the funky logo happens quite often. Like we said, it's in the backgrounds, but it's easy to miss, but it does happen quite a bit. So yeah, I could see it being a little bit more difficult just based on how many rules we think would be double digits.
Yeah, definitely. However, I'd also like to say that this movie in general is a good drinking game because it's fairly easy to understand.
Oh, yeah.
Just with parenting and coping mechanisms and all that. It's a fun movie to watch with friends especially. You don't have to think super, super hard about it. It's a fun movie just to play on, kind of have in the background with subtitles. Drink and watch with your friends for sure.
Yeah, exactly. I think this would be one of the better drinking games in terms of, new slashers released, because it's a slasher, let's be honest. But yeah, it's definitely a good one. But anyways, that's all we got for the drinking game for M3GAN. With all that being said, we hope you enjoyed the drinking game. If you ended up playing the game alongside the movie, or if you have any feedback or suggestions, let us know in the comments below. Make sure that you like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next episode, which will be on another 2023 released Skinamarink. But with that being said, thanks for tuning in, and this is us saying cheers to fears.